This was a dark and excruciating night in our nation's capital.
Tragedy reaching from D.C. to the Sunflower State and across the world.
We have been told that there are no survivors.
As a rescue mission shifts to recovery,
This is a time right before the greatest light.
a community and a country comes together in mourning.
One Wichita, one Kansas, and one American community.
As Americans and even as nations, we are one family.
While investigators dig into the cause of a mid-air collision.
Not in 3 years, not in 4 years, but as quickly as possible.
And good afternoon. We are learning new details about the fateful flight from Wichita that plummeted into the Potomac River in Washington, D.C.
A U.S. Army helicopter crashed into that American Airlines regional jet Wednesday night as it tried to land at Reagan National Airport. All 67 people on board both aircraft are presumed dead. This is the deadliest U.S. air crash in over 2 decades.
Yeah, rescue teams continue to comb the icy water to recover bodies, but finding out exactly what happened last night, that's going to take months. The NTSB says they have not recovered the flight data recorders from the plane or the chopper. The agency expects to release a preliminary report within 30 days.
And city and state leaders will give us an update on what they know soon. Governor Laura Kelly just got to Wichita. She was supposed to hold a press conference at the top of the hour. We are just learning that things are running behind. And of course, we'll bring you that press conference live as soon as that begins.
Well, that active recovery mission in the Potomac, it is ongoing.
First responders are continuing to search for victims. Our Washington correspondent Rashad Hudson is live at Reagan National Airport. Rashad, what's the latest on those recovery efforts?
Julia, Jeff, the recovery efforts have now moved, sadly, to that recovery mission where they were hoping that they would find some glimmer of survivors, but first responders said that they don't expect any survivors. Now, we're here at the Reagan National Airport right outside of Washington, D.C., where the airport has opened back up, and there is some activity behind me as people are boarding flights. But over in the Potomac, that rescue or that recovery mission continues. Now, first responders worked throughout the night in frigid waters trying to recover parts of the plane as well as victims that were on board.
All right, Rashad Hudson reporting there live for us in Washington, D.C.
All right, let's get to City Hall. Governor Laura Kelly is about to begin a media briefing.
Multiple members of our local, state, and federal levels of government, including Governor Laura Kelly. First, I want to once again express my deepest condolences for those directly impacted by this tragedy and to our entire community, as Wichitans, as Kansans, and as Americans. We grieve this loss together, and we grieve deeply. But in this dark time, the light can be found in people raising their hand, showing up, and offering help. And I want to say thank you to many of the individuals in our community who donated water, donated food, and trying to make it comfortable for those who are trying to report about this tragedy from our community, as well as those who have friends and families affected. I am really grateful to the kindness of Wichita. We've had donations, again, from all across the city, so again, thank you. We also have grief assistance that Sedgwick County is providing, and there will be further information regarding that in the coming hours. That is who Wichita is. For those that don't know Wichita, Kansas is the air capital. It's a community built on kindness, built on being together and working together. And we have an opportunity to use our words for comfort. We can use our actions towards helping and uplifting one another. And here in our community, we unite. And you saw that in our community-wide prayer at noon today. You saw faiths from all across the spectrum. You saw people of all races, of all backgrounds, because Wichita is very diverse, and I'm proud to come from this community. This is my community. I've grown up here, and I'm proud to be a Wichitan. And I'm proud that this community is coming together in a time like this, in a tragic event that should unite us all to remember that life is precious. So at this time, I would like to invite Kansas Governor Laura Kelly to provide remarks.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and afternoon, everybody. I really do appreciate all of your being here. It is very important that the people who have been affected by this tragedy know that they've got folks on the ground working on their behalf. I have been incredibly impressed with the response of the mayor's office, our first responders here, the Red Cross, and a number of other nonprofit groups that have really gathered together to be as responsive as is humanly possible to meet the needs of those who've been impacted by this incredible tragedy. So I'd also like to reassure people that we are in constant communication with our federal partners. Both the mayor and I have been on the phone constantly since last night with representatives from the National Transportation Safety Board, from the governors of Virginia and Maryland, and all sorts of other folks who are involved with this tragedy. And I can assure you that they are working as hard and as fast as they possibly can. I mean, they had first responders from multiple jurisdictions respond last night, all through the night, first for the rescue and then for the recovery operations. So what can be done is being done. I know that the Red Cross has set up a center in Bethesda, Maryland, I believe at the Hyatt Regency, for folks who are on that end of this tragedy, and that we have the Red Cross set up here at Eisenhower Terminal. So there are resources available for people. And the other thing we would like is American Airlines is responsible for notifying the families of the folks who perished in this plane crash. They would like it very much if you think you might know somebody, if you think a friend of yours, a family member, or someone else was on that plane, please contact American Airlines and let me give you their number. It is 1-800-679-8215. Let me repeat that. 800-679-8215. If you have any suspicion that you knew somebody on that plane, please call that number. And I also like to thank the press for being here in such force. You know, you are the way we are able to communicate with people and to reassure them that people have their backs and are on the watch, and that there are resources available for them. So thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you again, Governor Kelly. Really appreciate, again, that constant communication we've received from the governor's office, as well as the offices of our federal partners, including Senator Moran, Senator Marshall, Congressman Estes, and I also had a phone call from Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. So I'm, again, very appreciative that people are reaching out. My colleagues as mayors all across the United States have been in constant contact with me. Friends that just know or have flown to Wichita, have visited this community, have been sending well wishes and prayers to all of us, and I'm very grateful that people are reaching out to all of us. But I ask that each of those prayers really go to the individuals who were on that flight, to the families who were on that flight, to the first responders in Washington, D.C. who are helping with the recovery efforts, and truly prayers for our entire greater Wichita and Kansas community. I would like to invite our representative for Senator Roger Marshall to please say a few words.
Good afternoon. I'm Kenya Cox, District Director for U.S. Senator Marshall. Senator Marshall is continuing to work with our federal delegation to provide real-time information to both our state and local leadership as it becomes available. Senator Marshall issued the following statement this afternoon. As we continue to process this horrible tragedy, my office stands ready to assist the families, friends, and colleagues of those who lost loved ones. My staff and I remain in contact with Mayor Wu, with airport leadership, the NTSB staff, and as we learn more about the accident, we will continue to provide those details. My prayers continue to be with the families and the entire Wichita, Kansas community as we recover from this tragedy. Thank you.
As I mentioned, our Wichita community is very unique. We have a lot of wonderful partners that come together in a time like this. Whether you see, again, the water, the coffee, this community is a helpful community. And one of those helpful neighbors is the Wichita Community Foundation. I would like to invite Shelley Pritchard from the Wichita Community Foundation to discuss a new resource they have set up for families impacted by this tragedy.
Good afternoon. As Mayor Wu said, I'm Shelley Pritchard at the Wichita Foundation, and this is Courtney Bankston, our Chief Strategy Officer. We don't normally dress like this. We literally just got off a plane at our fabulous airport and ran over here so we could help share this news. So we have been working with a very wide variety of community partners, and we've established a fund called ICT-together.org. There's links on our website. There'll be a lot of links. Early last night, we started having people reach out to us to find out how they could help, how they could contribute, and what it would look like. So this will be used for crisis remediation, help with mental health. We don't know yet what that will be, but we invite the community, if you are feeling this pain the way many of us are, that if this is a way that you'd like to be a part of that, we'd invite you to join that. And Courtney will tell you about some of the other folks we're working with in D.C.
Thanks, Shelley. Good afternoon. We are very pleased to be in conversation with a lot of local partners, as well as people that were affected in the tragedy in Washington, D.C. So while we're still working out a lot of details, we are working with the Greater Washington Community Foundation, as well as 2 or 3 community foundations in the Virginia area. We also are in conversations with others who may have been impacted by this, whether they lived in Wichita or in the D.C. area, and we'll continue to work on that collaboration over the next couple of days.
So as you hear of things, people can certainly reach out to our website, send us messages or whatever, but we'll work with people. We're not the mental health experts, but we are always working with the people who are. So we'll find those experts in the community and make sure that they receive that funding to help the families and those in the community who are most impacted. Thanks.
All right, you've been watching a live media briefing from Wichita City Hall, including Mayor Lily Wu there, and of course Governor Laura Kelly. And really, Julia was about to reiterate that there are resources available for people that have been impacted by this tragedy.
And those resources set up at Wichita Eisenhower National, and then as well reiterating that American Airlines is notifying next of kin, and so all of those details will be coming from American Airlines.
As the Wichita community mourns, they are also coming together to show support.
KSN's Aditi Lamba is live from City Hall. That's where people gathered earlier today for a prayer service.
Jeff, Julia, it's been a tough day all day for everyone I have talked to. Many stressing that this is the time that the community should come together and really be there for each other, while also praying for those who have lost someone. A few hours ago, the council chambers were packed for a vigil. Wichita leaders and residents gathered to remember the victims and their families. Many saying Wichita is a small community where everyone knows each other, saying many Wichitans will know someone who is impacted. Local faith leaders offered comfort through prayers, encouraging community members to take time to process all that has happened. Many saying this is a colossal loss for our community.
I do know a couple of the families that have been impacted by this. It is a tremendous loss for those individuals, and it will be something that will take a lifetime for them to process and to come to grips with.
The family that came to the airport last night, he did know. I served on a board with him. He's a wonderful, wonderful human being, and he lost his daughter. So sad, but I feel so bad for him and his family.
Councilmember Johnston also said he hopes they're able to get more information on others who were on the flight so that they can reach out to those families. Both also said that this is the time we have to stay Wichita strong and really be there for each other. One person told me that the community will be a light for the rest of the country. We will come together with solidarity and support and strength. Jeff, Julia.
Aditi, thank you. Governor Laura Kelly has ordered Kansas flags to be lowered to half-staff in honor of the victims of the D.C. plane crash. The flags will remain at half-staff until sundown February 6th.
And the American Airlines CEO, part of a news conference this morning in D.C., he says the airline is heartbroken for the loved ones of the passengers and crew members, as well as the military members on that helicopter.
Our focus right now is doing everything that we can to support all of those involved and also the PSA Airlines team. This is devastating. We are all hurting incredibly.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy also commented. He says the U.S. has the safest and most secure airspace in the world.
And this right here is a picture of what the American Eagle plane looks like. It is a CRJ-700. It had 60 passengers and 4 crew members on board.
Now, Kansas lawmakers are reacting to the devastating news of the plane crash. In a joint effort, Senator Jerry Moran and Senator Roger Marshall spoke about the tragedy today. Both say they are heartbroken.
We're thankful for the efforts to try to save lives last night, but we know that there's a lot of people in our home state that are grieving and sad.
I can't spend enough time expressing our concern and prayers. When I said this last night as well, when one life is lost, it's a tragedy, but when many lives are lost simultaneously, in this case, maybe 67 individuals died, it's an unbearable sorrow.
They say they remain in close contact with investigators as the recovery efforts continues. Current and former U.S. and Russian figure skaters were on the passenger plane. U.S. Figure Skating released this statement today. It says in part, quote, "We are heartbroken to learn that figure skaters, along with their families, friends, and coaches, are understood to be among those on board." The Boston Skating Club says 6 of its athletes, coaches, and family members were on that flight 5342. They were flying back to D.C. after attending a national development camp in Wichita following last week's U.S. championships. Multiple federal agencies launched an investigation into how the crash happened. President Trump says he is working to get answers, but he is suggesting diversity policies may be to blame.
Our Washington correspondent Hannah Brandt joins us. And Hannah, what is the federal government's response?
Well, Jeff, Julia, in the wake of this devastating D.C. crash, President Trump says his administration is working to quickly figure out how it happened.
In the wake of the devastating D.C. plane crash, President Donald Trump is promising answers.
We'll get to the bottom of it.
The National Transportation Safety Board is leading an investigation into how a U.S. Army helicopter collided with an American Airlines plane.
We do not know enough facts to be able to rule in or out human factor, mechanical factors. That is part of the NTSB investigative process.
Investigators say there are no survivors among the 64 people who were on the plane or 3 soldiers on the helicopter. And Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says their families deserve to know why.
We commit to them that we are going to get to the bottom of this investigation, not in 3 years, not in 4 years, but as quickly as possible.
President Trump says he doesn't know exactly how this deadly crash happened, but he suggested the Biden administration and its diversity policies could be to blame.
We're going to look into that and we're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest.
President Trump argues diversity policies go against that objective, specifically slamming a previous FAA policy that called diversity integral to safety.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's just the opposite.
And he attacked former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg for how he led the department.
He's run it right into the ground with his diversity.
He was asked why he believes diversity hiring contributed to the accident.
Because I have common sense. Okay.
And today, President Trump signed a memo ordering an assessment of aviation safety and an elevation of competence over DEI.
And today, President Trump signed a memo ordering an assessment of aviation safety and of competence over DEI. Here for you in Washington, Hannah Brandt, KSN News 3.
Canine search and rescue teams play a critical role in supporting response efforts.
Yeah, one of those teams is the Urban Search and Rescue Task Force 7 in Sacramento, California. This group recently helped provide aid following the deadly LA wildfires. Ready?
Once off the leash, it's time to get to work.
Nice job.
Sacramento's Urban Search and Rescue Task Force 7 team is made up of 10 canines trained to search through the rubble, to rescue or recover, working through several emergency scenarios they could likely be called to.
We actually have a person hiding in there right now, so that's actually the third victim that canine is found on this particular drill.
These dogs undergo weekly training.
You constantly have to be training, right? You constantly have to be putting repetitions in, changing their locations, changing the sites,
polishing their skills, and tackling on not so easy tasks.
And ladders may not be his favorite thing, but he's able to persevere and go through it.
Go on.
Meet Captain Brandon Budd and his partner, Otter.
Well, you heard the story about the bull in the china shop? He's the bull in the china shop.
They've cultivated a partnership, one built on trust, and one that expands beyond just work.
I have him 24/7, so he goes home with me and he also goes to the firehouse because we're also available for local deployments, local disasters.
Answering the call to service just a few weeks ago following the deadly Southern California wildfires.
Our mission primarily was search and recovery, which is it's not a fun mission. It's not an easy mission, but the reality is gives us an opportunity to give closure to the families that are down there.
When we got down there, like you can see stuff on the news, but when you get there and actually see it in real life, the smells, everything, it just really hits home, and it was just truly overwhelming.
Putting their countless hours of training into action.
It's impressive to watch them work when they're out on the pile. They're able to pick up scents that obviously us humans can't.
Knowing they're ready for the next mission at hand.
You know that if there is someone to be found, that you're going to be the ones to find them.
All right, Lisa, thank you. Officials now say all 64 passengers and crew on the jet and the 3 soldiers on the chopper are presumed dead.
The crash is the deadliest in the U.S. in nearly 24 years. NBC's Jay Gray has the latest from Washington.
Teams continue to search the bitter cold waters of the Potomac. Their mission now shifting from rescue to recovery.
At this point, we don't believe there are any survivors from this accident.
A horrific midair collision. An American Airlines regional jet on final approach to Reagan National Airport with 60 passengers and 4 crew members, and an Army Black Hawk chopper, 3 soldiers on board during what's described as a routine training flight, both aircraft exploding into a fireball at impact.
We will look at the aircraft, we will look at the helicopter, we will look at the environment in which they were operating in.
Investigators stress finding a cause is going to take some time. They'll analyze black box flight data recorders and cockpit voice recordings, as well as air traffic control communications, and eventually literally piece together the wreckage.
That we are going to leave no stone unturned in this investigation.
As that work continues, so does the difficult task of finding the victims. Dozens have been pulled from the crash site, crews promising to continue until all 67 who died are found. A group that includes several young figure skaters and their coaches.
It's a close, tight bond, and I think for all of us, we have lost family.
Overwhelming loss that so many families are dealing with right now. And back to the investigation now, where officials say they have not at this point found either the data recorders or voice recordings from either flight, though they're confident that will happen. They're also focused on just how busy the airspace is here at National. The main runway is the busiest in the country with 800 takeoffs and landings every day. Jay Gray, NBC News, National Airport.
All right, Jay, thank you. About 20 minutes ago, Mayor Lily Wu and Governor Laura Kelly hosting a joint media briefing at City Hall in Wichita. KSN Zach Martin was there for this media briefing, and he joins us now with details of what came out of this briefing. Zach?
Yeah, guys, this one just wrapped up just moments ago. As you can see, still a lot of people milling about behind me. And the way that this opened up, Mayor Lily Wu came to the podium and said, quote, that we are grieving this as a community and together, and we are grieving deeply. This tragedy obviously has impacted a ton of people in the area, including, you can just see the heartfelt messages from the people in this press conference today as it just seems to be impacting everybody at a deep level. And Mayor Lily Wu did say that she does not know how many Kansans or Wichitans were on that commercial flight. As of now, she says that officials have been asking for that list, and Governor Kelly says that American Airlines are waiting for all the families to be notified before an official list of victims is released. Governor Kelly was also asked about those who are wary of flying due to the crash, but she says that this is obviously the safest form of transportation. Mayor Wu also said she was appreciative of constant communication between all the agencies involved in the recovery. She also explained how if you visit Wichita, you are a Wichitan, and that includes all of the figure skaters who, of course, were just here last week for the U.S. National Championships. Well, plenty more from this press conference coming up a little bit later on the news at 5. Here for you from City Hall, Zach Martin, KSN News 3.
Zach, thank you. Congressman Ron Estes also offering his condolences and support to those affected by this deadly crash. Estes says he has been in contact with authorities in D.C., staying on top of the recovery efforts. He said that includes the NTSB and the White House.
We are getting updates. Obviously, this is a lot of new information comes in very frequently going through that process. And unfortunately, even with that new information coming in, we're not getting as much as we want as soon as we want it.
He says crews are focused on salvage efforts, trying to get key parts of the airplane.
And as authorities work around the clock to recover crash victims and notify their loved ones, we are slowly learning their identities and stories. Our DC's Raquel Martin takes a closer look.
As the recovery effort unfolds on the Potomac, loved ones of those tragically killed when an American Airlines jet collided with a military chopper are still in shock. Authorities confirm no passengers survived the crash.
It's just devastating.
Douglas Lane's 16-year-old son, Spencer Lane, was identified as one of 15 figure skaters on board.
His coaches were also on the flight with him, wonderful people.
2 Russian world champion skaters are among the 67 victims.
I really can't believe that it happened.
The U.S. figure skating community is grappling with the news.
We're family.
Others identified: Ian Epstein, an American airline crew member. 3 soldiers who were operating the military helicopter also died.
There are a lot of people hurting today.
The Trump administration tells us right now it set up a crisis center in Bethesda, Maryland to give victim families a place to come together.
It's a heartbreak beyond measure.
Kansas Republican Senators Roger Marshall and Jerry Moran say they're working to get answers for people back home. The nonstop flight was heading inbound from Wichita, Kansas.
All of us are going to know Kansans who've experienced a tragedy. We'll know them personally, know their family members.
Back in the close-knit community of Wichita, leaders are leaning on prayer.
Because we are one Wichita.
For the Lane family based in Rhode Island, they're leaning on each other.
I guess we just have to celebrate the journey that's taken us here so far.
Here for you in Washington, Raquel Martin, KSN News 3.
And dozens of flights canceled this morning at Reagan National Airport following the crash. American Airlines has canceled a majority of its flights at DCA today. Altogether, there are more than 500 cancellations.
The Wichita Ice Center staff is overcome with grief in the aftermath of the deadly air crash. The center's GM says his team really got to know several of the athletes in Wichita for development camp and the U.S. Figure Skating Championship. He also says this tragedy will leave a lasting mark on his team.
It's an unbelievably tragic day here, and you know, we're one step in front of the other, and we're just trying to comprehend the immense tragedy. It's terrible.
The ice center is open today to the public.